It is time for this week's live stream. Hello, everyone. I want to thank my sponsor, Fritz Aquatics, for sponsoring this channel. I also want to remind you that Coral Magazine is the magazine that you should be subscribed to. I say that as a hobbyist as well as the executive editor of the magazine, and I highly encourage everyone to be an avid reader of this magazine. I offer free consultations if you need help with your tank one-on-one. I am here to do that. Usually it's a video chat, and I encourage you to join me in those conversations, and because I can help you get figured out and what's going on with your tank. And then finally, see, I got a little nervous. I didn't see anyone here. Rogers Food is a new sponsor of this channel. Rogers Food is a frozen food mix. If you don't have access to it yet, you can ask your local fish store to start carrying it. It's a company based out of Florida. Their food is designed to be fed in a feeding pouch, and it allows people to keep the food in the tank and not have it float down the overflow box. So here I am, everyone. I'm kind of debating what to do with this room. So behind me, I wore a different mic. So hopefully, hello everybody. Hopefully it's not crazy loud, or I don't know. It seems like it's set too high, but I'm wearing a different mic today. So I need your feedback to tell me if I'm blowing out your speakers and making it sound bad. I will try not to talk too loud, but I keep seeing a red line here and I just don't know what's going on. Okay, so this week's topic is about multiple tank syndrome, and I have a real problem with it. But before I get into that, I want to kind of show you what I'm trying to do back here. Grab myself a handy tape measure, and I've got this one bookcase here. It's like an extra that I believe will fit against this wall perfectly, and then take that one and put it on its side, and it could be along that wall, and it'll get me that L shape that I'm hoping for. The one thing I wasn't sure about was the height. Was it too low or not? So this is right at 31 inches. And if I were to put the water box 20 gallon on there, that probably puts the water line around here, which I think kind of works well for the live stream because it would be in this corner over here. But I don't know if this cabinet can handle this sideways pressure because it's designed to stand. And while you can turn on side, I'm going to fill it up with magazines, and they're really heavy. So I've got the weight on the side. I've got the weight on these shelves on the side. I just don't know if it's going to work out or not, but I'm debating that right now. And I can't make up my mind. So, it's so hard to make these decisions. Let's see, mic is too loud. All right, let's adjust it down a little bit. I had a feeling it was too loud. How about now? Is that going to be better? It's going to take a little bit of time. All right, so I came home from Reef stock with a new tank. This one right here. It's a little glass tank from P&W Customs, and it is made of glass, not acrylic, which I like because that means I can clean it and not worry about scratching it. It has a compartment here to show how many. Oh, let's put my hand here. You can see it shows the water line in there. And you've got a compartment here for filtration. There's a spot here in the middle for like a tiny heater. And then there's the return pump area. The return pump is this guy right here. It's so cute. And this right here, I believe, goes like this. So there's my return pump. And this right here is for filtration. The water just flows down and through. So I could take a couple of pieces of polyfilter, but then I have the ChemiPure right here. Put that in there right there. And now I've got filtration. And I could move this up and down. Obviously I could change it up. And then you would just put it into the back of the tank and let the water flow through it. The return pump, like I showed you, would then go into this compartment and connect to this little nozzle right here. And then I've got a piece of scape right there. So I'm thinking that's what it's going to be, is for the barnacle blenny. And then I've got a bowl of clean sand that I can use to put in the bottom of the tank. And my initial gut reaction was to just go ahead and set it up right now and just put the fish in it, boom, and not cycle it. but that's really not the right way to run a reef tank or to run any kind of tank. And so I am going to cycle it, and so that's why I need to get this situation behind me figured out, because I kind of want it in this room with me, with my other tank that's going to be in this room with me, because multiple tank syndrome. Now this tank has a lid that fits on top. It's made of acrylic, so that reduces evaporation. It has an included light that sits on top that's blue lighting, which may or may not be good. I'm thinking about talking to Dennis, who goes by Tyga Boy on Instagram, and seeing if he has a different light suggestion, because he's just one of those guys that has tons of tiny tanks, so he might have an idea for a tiny little light. And then there's a tiny little heater that fits in the back too. And then because the water box will be in that back corner, I'm thinking that I can plug in items from this tank along with the things plugged in the water box all into the hydros, and that'll give me a little bit of control for what this tank needs, which there's not much it needs. I mean, all we're going to do is circulate water and feed a fish. But that's kind of where I'm at with this little tank. We'll put it right there for now. I think that, oh, that's a terrible spot. Let's put it right there for now. That's a better spot for today. So when it comes to doing some kind of, or running multiple tanks, I'm moving everything around here because there's just this mess in front of me now. When you're running multiple tanks, the question is, can you maintain them? Can you do a good job with them? And that really comes down to the maintenance. And I say maintain, maintain means keep, but maintenance is part of every tank. And I just saw a post by another Instagrammer I follow who made the comment about how his water is always crystal clear. And he said, well, he changes the water weekly and he cleans the glass meticulously all the time. He never lets the glass get dirty. And that's why that tank always looks brand new at all times on Instagram. And he's got a big following. He's got over 40,000 people following him, and this is one of the reasons. So if you are not staying on top of your own current one tank, are you really a good candidate for another one or two, I'm sorry, 3, 4, 5 tanks? You want to stick to the one you have and get better at that care of the one aquarium. Now my 400-gallon Reef obviously is my main primary tank, and it's going to stay like that forever as long as it keeps holding water. But Caitlin's Reef was more of an accident. I didn't intend to set up the secondary tank myself. We had, when she was here, we were intending to give her her own tank. And then when I got the little Japanese pygmy angelfish, I made a last-minute decision to not put that tiny tank-raised fish, that was captive bred, inside a 400-gallon Reef with giant vortex pumps that could chew it up. And instead, I made a sudden change of direction and decided to set up a second tank. And then when I got the water box, about 6-8 weeks ago, a friend of mine called me up and said, please come take this tank. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And then I was trying to figure out where on earth to put it right now, and I stuck it in the living room in this spot that kind of worked for now. But when I put it there and I stood back, I realized I had not had a tank in that spot in my house for over 20 years. That I had taken down a tank that was in that spot in 2004. Well, so there we are, 20 years. And in that time, since, I really enjoyed being there, but I'm going to like it much better in this back corner here, which will be good because, number one, the tank is super quiet, and number two, it gives you an aquarium in the background, because I know you guys love seeing some kind of aquatic something in the background and not just my office area. So I get that. And I think this will be a good spot for the electricity, for the needs of the tanks, and it'll be good for maintenance purposes because I can come right here and do it. So if you consider that you want, I just see the red line coming up a lot. I'm just worried I'm over loud. So I need you guys to, again, let me know what's going on with the microphone. I'm going to double check the comments and see if I have to lower it even more. Okay. Someone says it sounds hollow or tinny. There's not really a lot I can do about that. I might be able to cheat one thing really quick. Sorry, I just like to get this squared away so that we have good audio for this video. Here I'm already 10 minutes in and I'm checking audio. but I have this little foam cover that might make a difference. Okay, we'll see if that makes any difference. Hopefully it's better. Sometimes it's just the simplest little solutions, you know. Okay, so I will see what you guys say. Let's see. Manoj wants to know if there's been any updates on the auto feeder yet. No, not yet. It's right here next to me. I am the king of taking my time. So I will be giving you guys an update on that soon. John wants to know about that little tank, how I can keep it from overheating in the summer. Well, first of all, the tank is going to be sitting in ambient, decent temperature. And just like all my other tanks. I mean, I keep the house right around 71, 72 degrees year round. And that little tank there has the only source of heat will be the heater. And of course, the little tiny itty bitty return pump, which how much heat could possibly come off this pump. So I don't really anticipate heat, but if there's no cover on it, then it has natural cooling through evaporation. If I leave the cover on it, then it may run a little bit warmer. But the beauty of it is by plugging it into the hydros, I can stick another thermometer in that tank and I can check my phone and see where it's at. Because small, itty bitty, tiny pico tanks, the two things you have to worry about are going to be evaporation and temperature. And keeping those two things in line are very important. So leaving the lid on eliminates evaporation. But the heating part, you got to make sure it stays in a stable spot. Now the little tiny light that tank came with is LED. It's a little tiny circle. It's like a puck. And I just think it's going to work out fine. I mean, I don't know. I got to find out. But I can tell you this, at the trade show, I had it set up at Reef stock on my table, and I put some zoanthus in there, and they just closed up and stayed closed. And I thought, what is going on? I mean, come on. They should be open by now. And the aquarium, I finally checked the temperature. It was 68 degrees. I said, yeah, okay, I thought this tank needed a heater. So I went over to the P&W Customs booth and said, I need a small heater, and I know you got just the one. So he handed me one. I plugged it in, got the heat up to about 75 degrees in that tank. I was like, okay. So same principle, finding that sweet spot with this tank where it doesn't get too cool at night, where it doesn't get too hot during the daytime, and hopefully I can find the ideal spot that will make it all work out fine. Larry says, do not touch the microphone volume. Okay, not going to touch it. All right, so right now we're looking at a 400-gallon tank, which is turning 11 in November. We've got the Caitlin's Reef, which is over 2 years old. We've got the new water box. Then we've got the little 1-gallon tank that I'm planning to put the blending in. And I'd like to put something else in with that blending, but I have no idea what. I really don't. Something simple. Maybe macroalgae. I don't know. The light that came with the tank is blue, and that's not going to be really conducive for macroalgae growth, honestly. I think I'd need a white light. And because that blending is pretty, has blue in its skin, I don't know that I want to look at it under blue light either. So I might light it with a white light. So I might find a similar one, or like I said, ask Dennis what he recommends. But that's not the only thing that, so we're talking about dreaming up the ideal tank. But the maintenance part that I started to talk about a few minutes ago, we can't neglect that, because the fact is that now that's another vessel of water that needs to have water testing done. It's another vessel. It's going to need water changes. It's going to need the little pads changed in that filtration tray because they're going to get clogged up with stuff. The glass itself has to be cleaned on that tank, just like all the other tanks. So you got to think ahead. So while I was at Reef Stock, I went to Dirk's booth and I picked up myself this small Python Pro Clean gravel vac system. It's just a nice size to do filtration of the sand bed in the water box, as well as in this new little 1-gallon tank. I mean, as soon as I start the thing, it's going to suck it all out. So I've got to be very careful with that one to clean it. But I picked that up. I also got this in my goodie bag, and it is some kind of a coral feeder from Polyp Labs that they gave away to everyone. Let's open it up. It's a little bit long, but that doesn't mean, oh, it's been sealed for my protection. So we've got two things in here. Ah, okay. For tall tanks and for short tanks, I'm going to throw this away right here. So we've got a short tube here, and then we've got a longer tube. It's got the bulb on the end for slurping it up and squirting it out. And then it's got this spoon-looking thing with a bunch of tiny holes right here so that I can squirt food into the coral I'm trying to feed. I can target feed it. So here is that right there. It's very small. It's good. The camera's going to focus on me. Sorry. I always have to put it near my face. But it's got tiny little holes in it on both sides of that sponge part, or spoon part. And then we've got our bulb. So now we have a little tiny one for a tiny tank. So I got that for free. That was a freebie. I picked up, I think I mentioned to you guys recently, I was looking for pipe brushes. Found this in Dirk's booth. So it's a nice large diameter pipe brush. I also wanted a scrubby. I know it seems like the silliest stuff to buy, but I bought this to clean the inside of my sump because I have a rim around my sump, a flange, and so reaching in and trying to do it with a sponge is kind of tough, and I thought this might make my life a little easier and I can just scrub it. Apparently this is a one and done type thing. I'm not sure how I could ever replace this padding if I got worn out, but I've seen the fish store use this many times. Like, I need to buy me one too. So I did. I also got some just tchotchke stuff, and I got some pellet food from Hikari. So it's just some very small marine carnivore. And there's a picture of a butterfly on the front. Now, some butterflies can be carnivorous. I also picked up some more blades from the handy, or they're called handy blades, for my magnetic scraper. So I always buy these at the show. And every time I walk up, if I'm within 40 feet of Dirk's booth, he's like, I got your blades, because he knows I'll buy them. And so I bought myself 3 of these, and I put them on my mag float, and I go over my 400 gallon and get the glass nice and clean. It always makes me happy. And then this was given to me by one of the booths that was there. So this one comes from from MaxSpec, and it is a glass cleaner. Triggerfish says there's an echo. I don't know why. There's only one microphone and I'm wearing it. And the other microphone's unplugged. So this right here is a chamois, not a piece of cloth. And we use these for our cars. And I got this given to me, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll be happy to give that a try. So I'll try it on the tanks. It's a nice soft fabric. So that was kind of cool. What else? Got some more ChemiPure, a big jar of it. Still sealed for my protection. And this is the polyfilter I was talking about earlier. So this stuff is very specific. It's been around forever. It's designed to remove contaminants from your tank. It's great in emergencies. You can put this inside a canister filter. You can put it in a hang-on-block filter. You can put it in between the baffles of your sump. And based on what color it turns, it tells you what contaminant got in the tank. So there's a whole list of colors on here. And it says here if it's dark blue, if this changes to dark blue, it found copper. If it's orange, there's iron. If it's bright red, there's aluminum. Bright yellow is ammonia, amines or solvents. And then if there's something that dyed the water because some of the chemical got in there, like methylene blue or something, this would turn that color. If it turned dark brown, it's usually tannins. If it's light tan, it's organic waste. So anyway, this is one of those things that is really good for everyone to have in their possession just in case, for no matter what tank you run, because you just never know and you need to determine it. You can find out by seeing what color this changes. And it's called polyfilter. That's the true name. A lot of people think of polyfilter like it's the batting inside a pillow, and that's not what we want to use. We want something that is specifically made by Polybio Marine. They've been around like 50 years. I've been making this thing forever. It comes in different sizes. And I picked up some that you can cut with scissors to use inside your aquarium. This I got for a customer. Here was that tiny heater I told you about. So the box is ginormous compared to the heater. So the heater uses a USB connection, and this is the heater right here. It's so cute. And then you have a USB plug, and then you have a controller. All of it's so much bigger than the heater itself. I mean, there's the heater, but you get all this other crap with it just to plug it in, which is really funny for such a tiny tank, but I'll make it work. I also picked myself up the Nano Mag from Two Little Fishies. So it's just a little cleaning magnet to clean the glass. I haven't even opened this up yet, because I knew I was going to want to clean the glass in that tiny tank. So here is our little scrubby that's going to go inside the tank. And then we put this giant thing on the outside to move it around to clean the glass. Yeah, I just kind of went on a shopping spree. Which is good for Dirk, and it's good for me. He has all kinds of stuff all the time. What else did I get? Oh yeah, I forgot about this. I bought myself some dental type tools. I'm sure some are going to fall out the packaging because the packaging's cheap, but I'm going to try to hold on to it. So I have all these tools in here. And these are just good for when you're picking at something on the rockwork, or you're trying to chip something off, or you're trying to make something cleaned up a little bit better. So I picked that up while I was there. And this was the light for that tiny tank. Again, it's another USB light. It just has an on-off button on it. So it just sits on that tank and just lights it up. Okay. Anything else? I picked up some more airline tubing because you never can have enough airline tubing, so I just got more. Might come in handy for drip acclimations. Here's another Chemi Pure for next month. And anything else important here? Got some stickers, because I needed more stickers for my sticker board. And then I got some more flyers and stuff from different companies. And I got some of this stuff called Quick Start. Huh. Quick Start allows instant addition of fish. It's by API. I might use it to cycle my tiny tank. I was wondering what I'd use to start it. All right, so that kind of catches you up on what happened at Reef stock. Let's see. Hey, Evan's here. He says, great seeing you at Reef stock. Waiting on delayed flight was way better with you there. Yeah, the flight going home, I think, was 4 hours late. And that really blew. That was just rotten. I was not happy about that. Unfortunately, the situation was just so difficult. I mean, because even the app itself kept shutting down. It wouldn't stay open. I'd get a notification saying your plane's moved to this gate, and then I would try to open it, and the app would just crash. And this went on for like an hour, and I thought, this is pretty bad. When the actual app you need to learn about your flight, to show the boarding pass, all that kind of stuff, won't stay open on your phone. I was like, this is how tenuous our digital life is. That's why I really do prefer having a paper ticket that's in my bag that I can just show them, because you just never know when something electronic is going to let you down. And that's super frustrating. Okay. So what else? In the freshwater side, a lot of people, when they have multiple tank syndrome, will tell me they have 20 or 30 tanks, and I think they're crazy. For me to have 4 or 5 already sounds like a lot of work. I came from a time back in the day when I had one aquarium, and I had that one aquarium for 7 years. And I saw no reason to have more than one. But with having different tanks in your home, it does allow you some freedom to have different kinds of livestock than you could maybe combine in one aquarium, because you may have a certain fish you really like, but it eats corals, which means now you can't have those corals in your tank, or you have to basically sacrifice those corals to keep this fish. But if you have a secondary tank where you can put that fish and not give it corals, then you can enjoy this fish, you can feed it whatever it is it needs to be fed to keep it healthy and happy, but your coral reef can stay intact and stay safe and thrive. So there is that thought. If you said, listen, I really want an octopus, and then you said also, I like the idea of having a seahorse, and then you say, and I really like lionfish, I know that they cause a lot of trouble, but I think I need that, then I would literally want you to have 3 tanks right there, because the lionfish is predator, needs predator blend food. It means you'll probably be putting in a fish occasionally for that lionfish to devour. The octopus is another predator, but it's an elusive one. It's secretive. It likes to hide a lot, and so it's going to want a home where it can explore and express its creativity, but at the same time it cannot escape. So you need something that's really locked down. You don't have to lock down a lionfish tank necessarily. But if you want a seahorse is a fish that eats whatever food it eats. It digests only 1/3 of the food it inhaled, and the other 2/3 comes out uneaten. So unless that seahorse is going to keep eating the same food over and over like a cow chewing its cud, which they don't do, you're going to have to put in foods that drift slowly for the seahorse to track down and eat. You're going to need to make sure that other things won't come in that are aggressive that would eat it really quickly. So for example, let's take real life. Let's say you have a seahorse in this small aquarium with some damselfish, for example. Damsels move really quick, and as soon as you put the food in the water, they're going to be pecking at it and devouring it so rapidly that the seahorse might be lucky to catch 1 or 2 bites before it's all gone because the damsels devoured it all. So instead, you would want the seahorse to be in their own aquarium with a slow flow pattern. You want the tank to be big enough for the seahorses so that they can be healthy, which means you can't just grab this little 1-gallon tank and stick it with seahorses. That's not going to work. You could start off baby seahorses in there, but typically a seahorse needs a certain type of tank, and usually it has to be a really tall one because seahorses go up and down. They don't swim side to side. They can move through a tank, yes, but they really are vertical fish, and so they need the up and down. So you would want a tank that's tall, which would be the exact opposite of what a lionfish needs. It needs a long tank to it can swim and hunt down its prey rapidly. So you see, we've got each animal needs its own biotope, and it needs to be designed for that animal. So like the octopus, you're going to need to have lots of rock work in there. It's going to have caves for it to hide in. It doesn't want bright light. That's why when you go to public aquariums, they always say no flash photography, because they need the dim light. That's what they prefer. It needs to be locked tight so they can't escape, and they are very good at escaping. Now, if you just have a solid top on top of the tank, you might think that's enough, except they can push it up to slither out, which means you need a giant rock on top, or you need something else that can lock and put a pin in there to keep it from popping out. There was one company that made an octopus tank years ago, and I thought it was really creative because when they built it, they had put in a notch around the 3 sides, the sides and the back, and you slid the cover in through the notch. I think that's called a dado joint, and you would slide the piece in, you put a couple of pins so it can't pop out of place, and that was supposed to keep the octopus from escaping. But if you don't use those kind of precautions, you'll end up with an octopus that has escaped the tank, may not make it back into the tank in time, and could perish on the ground. So we want to make sure that that is safe, and it needs to have its own specific biotope. I already talked about the seahorses. I'll go into that a little bit more. I usually don't like to use dark sand, but with seahorses, sometimes using a dark substrate is the better choice because they can see the food against the dark background. It makes it easier for them to spot what they're trying to eat. But then you've also got the benefit of the darker substrate not blinding the seahorse because the light isn't hitting it and then bouncing the light back into their eyes. Again, another animal that needs dimmer lights, which is why seahorse tanks are usually not brightly lit. The seahorse tank gets fed a lot, so it would have really high nutrients in the water column. And if you used a lot of bright lights, you just grow a lot of nuisance algae. So instead, the dim light works in your favor with that animal, even though you're feeding multiple times a day to keep the seahorses happy and healthy. And then, back to the predator lionfish. Well, that's just you need a box of water. You need to throw in something big for it to chow down rapidly. It will consume an entire fish in one bite. You probably want to do that a couple times a week, and you have to stay on top of water changes just because the amount of waste that is coming out of a fish that eats whole fish will definitely affect the parameters. And so in that tank, wouldn't really be ideal for you to have corals and things that don't like high nutrients. Instead, you're going to want to have a lot of rock work. You're going to have to figure out, maybe you can put mushrooms in there. You may discover the tank seems to grow a lot of aptasia easily, like the Dallas World Aquarium had in their huge exhibit filled with lionfish. The entire back wall was pure aptasia. And the owner of the facility, he liked it. He says it looked good. And yet for all of us, we would think, no, I do not want 10,000 aptasia in my tank. But trying to kill aptasia one by one in a tank with a lionfish that can sting you would be really rough. So again, trying to figure out what's best for you with the different tanks, you want to make sure that you can maintain them all and take good care of them and keep yourself safe at the same time. So if you're having a problem with for example, you have a regular reef tank and you've put in, different corals and different fish, and you've got this mixture and you like it, but then you're thinking, and this is me talking about myself, I can't keep Rickordia alive in this tank. I just can't do it. So that would be a reason for another tank, because then you could put the Rickordia in a different tank with different filtration or the lack thereof and see if they do better. And so in Caitlin's reef, there are 4 Rickordias in there, and they've been there for basically 2 years, I'd say. And they're doing quite well because that tank has minimal filtration. But on my reef tank, I put them in and they just turn clear, and then they just blow off the rock, and then I never see them again. So I chose to put them in a different environment where they're more likely to succeed. I also tend to believe that in that tank that zoanthids should do better. So far, that has not been the case, but because I know they like dirty water. But with the 6 months of dealing with dinoflagellates in that tank, I think anything that's still alive is a win because that was just a really trying time. And as you may know, dinoflagellates tend to be toxic to most livestock. And so having that in the system is detrimental to the growth of new corals or an increase of polyps like from zoanthids. So that tank has turned the corner finally. It's looking better than it did. And that makes me happy. I had a toast about it 2 weeks ago. There's still a little bit of stuff on the sand now. I'm like, where'd that come from? But I'm just kind of crossing my fingers and thinking it's nothing to worry about. And I'm going to go ahead and move forward with my life and go through the tank and start planting corals on the rock work and make sure that the top is clean the filter, remove the UV, just kind of get that thing looking a little bit more ship shape. I'd like it to be prettier when I look in there because it's got a gorgeous fish, but I want the environment, the biotope itself, to look pretty. And then when you're deciding on some other kind of livestock that maybe needs a lot of sand, that extra aquarium could be the ideal environment. Look, a lot of people these days are thinking, should I have sand or not? I've heard bad things. And so sometimes they lean into the bare bottom aquarium, the kind that has no sand at all, but then they want to buy certain animals like wrasses that sleep in the sand and they don't give them the sand. Or they may take like a Rubbermaid container, like they'll just take a bowl or something and stick it in the back of the tank, way in the back there where the fish can go in there and sleep in the sand at night and then come back out, but there's no sand in the aquarium and they think that they're just kind of controlling the environment. Well, it's so unnatural though. And to have this tray of sand in one corner of the tank, it reminds me of plastic, and we don't want plastics in the ocean. We talk about it all the time. And so to stick something unnatural in our aquarium, it's no good. So instead, don't get the wrasses unless you're going to run a tank with sand. Well, if you really think that this tank that has SPS corals doesn't need to have sand, then maybe set up a separate tank where you do put the sand and you put the wrasses, and you can enjoy them in their natural habitat. You can enjoy the SPS corals in their glass exhibit. Because that's what it feels like. It feels like an exhibit from a museum. For me, the bottom should always have substrate. That's just me. I've always felt that way. I don't see myself ever changing my mind. If there was an absolute nightmare with sand, I would siphon it out and put in new sand. I mean, I would never not have sand. And a lot of times I tease people, when I see their tank, I'm like, oh, it looks great. When are you adding the sand? And they're like, never. I'm like, yeah, that's all you need, and this tank will be tank of the month. And but there's lots of reasons why people have chosen not to use sand these days. Primarily, the number one reason is they don't like the look of when it looks dirty. That's the real, true reason. But they'll say other reasons, like, well, I can have way more flow in my tank because the sand's not blowing around. Well, if you use the different size grades of sand, you can find sand that won't move no matter how much flow you have in the tank. There's an upcoming article in Coral Magazine where he talked about using chunks of sand that were 1 to 2 centimeters. I'm like, wow, that's like grapes in the bottom of your tank. And then I thought, well, Jason Langer's aquarium portrait that we just recently featured, he used reborn media, the kind of stuff we put in a calcium reactor, and he used that as the substrate of his tank. And he doesn't have any sand at all. But he also doesn't have wrasses because wrasses need sand. So you have to decide what you're going to use in this tank that will work with the livestock. And if there's other livestock you want, you may need another tank, which leads to this multiple tank syndrome that, we joke about it. MTS, it sounds like it's this awful thing. It's just more work. You're signing up for more work. And if you feel like you already have too much to do, then you probably shouldn't get more tanks. You probably shouldn't get more livestock. You probably shouldn't do things to complicate things. But if you think, I really like this and I want to do this, then you should set it up in a way to where you can take care of it without it being a burden. And that is ultimately going to be your decision. And you got to think about what you're doing, because once you've spent the money to buy another tank, and you stick it in your house, and you add the water, and you put in, get it cycled, and you get the livestock in there, that's for life. I know people don't think that way. We're in such an impulsive, impetuous world where we want it now, but we aren't thinking long term. And that goes for people that are like living in an apartment, and then they get like a huge aquarium, and then the landlord finds out, and they get in trouble, and they have to take it down. How long was it up? Or how much weight can that apartment hold? Where I'm in a home that I've lived in for 25 years, I have a slab foundation. Sky's the limit. I can put as much weight in here as I want. I could basically make the whole house water if I wanted to. It would be a lot of work. And I'm never going to do that. But having all these different little tanks in my house, for some reason, I just want to do it now. I don't know why. It's the opposite of simplifying my life. But at the same time, I'll get to do different things. So like that little tank right there is going to have the little barnacle plenty. You saw the barnacle I put in there for my shape, my aquascape. I'm going to put sand in the bottom. And I don't know. That might be it. I kind of want to put something else in there. I talked about macroalgae earlier. Maybe some zoanthids would be interesting. I don't know. Maybe green star polyps. I don't know. But I could do something that I would never do in my main reef. And that's the beauty of having another tank, is it gives you some flexibility and some freedom to try something new without causing chaos in your existing setup. And that really should be your thought process. It's not just a matter of getting one more thing. It's a matter of having a reason for getting it, and then, of course, being able to keep up with it. And that's where you have to also decide, am I set up for this? Can I handle this many water changes? Can I handle having this much water on hand? Can I handle the humidity that comes with multiple tanks in my home or not? Is there something else you have to do? And once you've got that all figured out, then yeah, go crazy. Buy all the tanks you want. Let's see. Larry suggested the electric clam, the flame scallop. I don't think there would be enough food in that tank. I don't know. It's kind of an interesting idea, though. You just gotta, because look, if I feed the tank like crazy, it's gonna be super hard to keep clean. Right now, I'm feeding the crap out of that blenny in a breeder box right now. And the breeder box is just filled with algae. And I'm going in with tweezers and ripping off clumps to find my fish. It's terrible. But the fish is definitely getting well fed. That part's good. But I think I'll enjoy seeing it in that little box right there way more than I can inside a breeder box that's just obscured with green crap. And I am glad that I got the little tiny cleaning magnet. That's going to get some serious use on that tank on a daily basis, because I want to be able to look at it and enjoy it, and I want the little fish to be very easy to see. So let's see. Fairly Odd says, I can't wait for my Mila's Reef dosing containers. That must be you, Caleb. Yes, those are. I just put that on my. So I have this system where I take my orders from different customers and I put them in a build queue, and then I go from the top down. I try to. And I just moved the queue out there because I'm cutting out acrylic today and tomorrow, and that one is definitely on the list. So you'll be getting that soon. Now remember, whenever I build something in the summer, it's got to be built, it's got to cure, and then I can finally ship it. So you're going to wait a little bit longer. But it's coming very soon. All right, so Rick says, I'm a recovering MTS. I was at 14 tanks, and now I'm at 2. What'd you do with the other 12? Where'd they go? Estonian Reefer, thank you very much for the super chat. I just saw that on here. He says, thank you for your dedication to the hobby and for all the free information of use over the years. You know, I think I said this earlier, but I'm going to say it again because, you know, it's on my screen. We have had 325 live streams on this channel in the last 8 years. And that is a lot of streaming. And we really have covered all the topics. And I desperately feel like this channel needs some new something, a new approach, something different has to happen. I hate to say it, but I think part of it's going to have to be me editing videos. And this device right here has so much video content that's never seen the light of day. And I've mentioned, you know, over the last couple of weeks how I want to get the Aquashella video done, but at the same time, I'm a little bit overwhelmed to build it because there's a lot on my phone and I got to drag it off and start organizing it and then paste it together and make it into something good for y'all. And so last night I thought, oh, I'll do that. And I thought, whew, not tonight. So I'm hoping this weekend I'll just knock it out because I really would like to get that out and off my phone, number one. And number two, get it out there for you guys to see it because not all of you got to go. And so you get to explore the event virtually via the content that's shared on this channel. So I want to do that, but I was looking at some stuff that I did, you know, 5-6 years ago that's never been seen that really could be. I mean, there's so many possibilities. There's probably 50 videos, different things that could be shared. And it's just a matter of me sitting at the computer and editing. And, you know, I have to glue things for customers. I got to pack orders, you know, for, you know, the aquarium supplies people get from Mila's Reef. But at the same time, I also have to edit Coral Magazine. So there's that. And then, you know, you talk about editing videos. I mean, it just, my list of things that need to be done never ends. And then on top of that, just normal things like cooking and cleaning and feeding myself and my dog and taking care of all my different aquariums. And, you know, there's just a lot to do every single day. So I can set lofty goals, but I'm trying to set up goals that are continuous. So listen, the microphone, I'm still seeing comments that they're not happy, so I can just switch. And then we can keep going on with this conversation. Does that sound good? All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to mute myself for a second. And now I'm on the other microphone. You know what's funny is that this was the microphone I used to use for the show. And when I switched to this one, there was a lot of complaints about this one. But it seems like you guys are all used to this one now, and you don't want me to go back to this one. Now, this is the DJI microphone that I use when I record things on my phone for video content, and there's no complaints about that one. So, I don't know what to tell you, but, you know, I'm trying to please all y'all. All right. Hopefully that's better and you guys will enjoy it. And we'll get back on topic. Are there any questions today? I'd be happy to answer them. That's why I'm here. I see Elaine is here from Lazy Coffee Design. Hi, Elaine. I'm still using your notepads. I love them. They're really cool. Rather Be Traveling says, I just finished a water change and some cleaning. I finally have more rocks than green hair algae. I had the lights off for 3 days, but phosphate is still high at 0.22, so I just added some GFO. All right. That's so funny how you guys like different microphones. Go figure. The reason I did that today was because I knew I was going to walk around for that bookcase. And so I figured if I walk too far away from this microphone, you're going to complain that you can't hear me. So I thought, okay, I'll wear the microphone. But clearly that was a huge fail. So that's okay. Should I start over the entire topic all over again? Kidding, I'm kidding. Okay, so what else is coming up? I'm trying to think. I got nothing. I got nothing today. I thought about this topic. I knew it wasn't a super long one, but it is one that's worth talking about. And if you have experience with multiple tank syndrome, if you want to share your story with us, I'd love to see that. Whether it's you're watching this after the fact and you're just typing in the comments, please do. One of the the next issue of Coral Magazine that I'm working on right now, just so you know, is going to be all about substrate. So I think you'll find that to be an interesting content. And there's more in the works right now. The issue that's right now available is this one. Let's see, is this still in here? Let me check. Nope, that's not it. That's not it. It was this green one you saw before. And I'll just throw it on the screen really fast. This one here is the issue that is arriving in mailboxes now. And it's all about having specific biotopes that are featuring livestock from one area. So, for example, if you want to have a Florida Keys aquarium, that one right there would be only fish and coral from the Florida Keys. By the way, come back to me here. I wanted to mention that there's something cool that's happening right now in the Florida aquarium where they are capturing pillar coral spawn. And the pillar coral, it's really cool, but a lot of it has died, and so it is protected. It is illegal to purchase. And the Florida Aquarium has several specimens, and they were able to capture it spawning in the water so that they can grow out more. And my first thought was, as soon as you have some pieces, get them to us hobbyists to grow more of it because there's not enough of it left in the ocean. And they said, we can't, it's illegal. And I'm just thinking, isn't it time to spread out the collective volume of this coral before it's all gone? Because if just the Florida Aquarium has it, for example, and it may be just public aquariums can have it, I don't know. But if it's just in one or two locations and something terrible happens to that location, that's it. I mean, then we're looking for the last remaining one in the ocean. But if we could have more of them in more tanks in multiple locations, there's a better chance of survival long term. And then I had this other idea recently because my brain never stops. I dream about this stuff. It's pretty terrible. But I was thinking, they're complaining about corals that are getting overheated in the ocean. We know about the bleaching event on the Great Barrier Reef. We know about the huge bleaching event that happened in Florida last fall. The water it was measuring 100 degrees. And corals were lost, And I thought, you don't hear a lot of bleaching happening in Hawaii. Their water tends to stay stable. Why can't we grab some of those corals that are at risk and start planting them outside of these islands in Hawaii? And of course, I'm immediately shut down. We can't do that. You can't introduce a different species into this habitat. And I know that you can't. But maybe as a planet, we need to start thinking about if we should. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm completely wrong. And, maybe I haven't thought it through. I'm not the marine biologist I wish I was. And I don't have all the answers. But if we have a spot that continuously keeps getting too hot, but we have another ocean where it doesn't, then moving some of them to this other spot seems like a possible consideration. Might be a terrible one. I don't know. Like I said, the people that are smarter than myself would probably have, a dozen reasons why this is a terrible idea. Number one, I just know, just from the arguments alone, the concern is that you bring in a species of coral that doesn't naturally live there. What if it takes over and starts killing off the Hawaiian corals, for example? And I remember last year, I think it was around this time last year, someone kept planting acropora out there on the reefs, and whoever found out was really upset and was ripping them out of the ocean. And then a week later, there was more acros planted out there. And I was like, it's coral. I mean, who cares? But I should care, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm a little bit peeved that Hawaii has still closed the fishery and we can't get our yellow tangs and potter's angels and things like we used to. And so now I just want to throw other things at them. I don't know. I'm not that vindictive. I'm trying to give them more coral. But yeah, so maybe there's a real problem with putting other livestock there. Obviously, we don't like that there's lionfish that are eating all the fish off the coast of Florida, for example. They don't belong there. So yes, that is a problem. We don't want to put more there. But I'm just thinking of long term, these corals that are evaporating from... The problem isn't that there was a heat wave that wiped out some coral. The problem is that there's been so many different heat waves in a row that the reefs are not having a chance to rebound and recover adequately before the next heat wave comes in and hits them again and again and again. It's just like someone in a boxing ring. They can only take so many hits until they finally go down. And, if the boxer goes through a couple of rounds and then takes a nice break and then comes back a few days later and goes through a few rounds, they can go longer. But if they're just getting pummeled and pummeled and pummeled, finally they just go down. That's it. It's a knockout. And in the case of these corals, they can only take so much heat and then, they're just gone. And then what replaces them usually is algae. And algae grows over their dead carcasses, over their dead skeleton. And now we have this amazing algae forest, but the coral are gone. And, I'm a coral guy, so I love coral. And I just was trying to think of ways to keep having more of it. And I thought we should plant it somewhere else where, the water is less prone to get hot, is my thought. Larry says, should I try to replace the cracked front glass or just replace the entire aquarium? It comes down to how good you are at doing that kind of a repair. Depending on the tank, the age of the tank and everything. I mean, like, for example, in the past, some hobbyists really scratch up the front pane of their glass. And there's just so many scratches that they just want to replace the front. It's the only part that looks bad. Now, if the tank doesn't have an overflow box built into the back, the other choice is to take the whole tank and turn it 180 degrees and put the back on the front because there's no scratches on it because you very rarely clean the back glass. But if there's an overflow built in and the holes are drilled, then yeah, you can't flip it like that. Now, if you could mend it and put a new piece on the front, that'd be great. But what is the age of all the other seams of that aquarium? How long has it been going? Is it to the point now where it's just best to just replace it with a whole new tank? That's kind of where your thought process should go to decide what's best for you. For me, I love a new tank and I love a warranty. So when my 280 leaked, I had seriously considered having the entire tank disassembled and completely glued like new with a brand new front piece and then all the other glass reused. The entire tank was going to get new silicone. It wasn't just trying to silicone on a front piece. So I don't know what happened to your tank. I'm sorry to hear that the front got cracked, but you're going to have to figure out, is it worth the extra effort to replace one piece is the rest of it's still in really good shape. And that would be how you decide. And of course, how much money you want to spend. Rather Be Traveling says, what's the next show you'll be going to? It is going to be in October. It's on the 17th. And where is it? I'm looking. I'm supposed to know this by heart, but I don't. I think it's this one. It's in Maine, and it's a small event. I wasn't told the name of the event, but that is the next one. So it's in Portland, Maine. So I'll find out more, and I will tell you guys. But it's on 10... Oh, did I say 17th? 10/19. So it's coming up in a couple of months. Month and a half. Spanky STL says, can you explain how to know if you have too much electrical load? Sure, absolutely. So your circuits in your home are usually either 15 amp or 20 amp, and you're allowed to use 80% of a circuit safely. If you use more than that, there's a chance that you're going to overtax the circuit, which could warm up the wires in the wall and more than likely trip the circuit breaker itself. So we want to make sure we're not pulling too much load. Now there's a device on the market that's been around forever called the kilowatt. So KILL-OWATT, kilowatt. And you plug the kilowatt into the outlet on the wall, and then you plug in whatever you're using. In the case of an aquarium with like a power strip, you could take the entire power strip and plug that into the kilowatt, and then you can hit the button on the front and it'll show how much wattage everything's pulling. But keep in mind, certain things aren't going to be on at the same time, maybe while you're measuring. So perhaps your heater is not operational right then and there. You may need to turn up the heater and set the light at the strongest intensity you normally run it at, and make sure all your pumps are running at full strength. And when you've got all those things set up, then you can see the total wattage you're using, and you can figure out how many amps you're using, and then you can find out if you're okay or not. Now, a 15 amp breaker, using 80% of it would mean you're allowed up to 12 amps. And if you had a 20 amp breaker, then a 20 amp circuit, then you would be able to use up to 16 amps on that outlet. Depending on tank size, you would determine how much power you're going to be pulling. So for example, you have a 100-gallon aquarium, you need a 300 watt heater, you need 2 lights that are 200 watts each, so you got 400 watts, you got 700 watts. You can see how we're rapidly coming up on 1,000 watts, which is just the easiest way to do it. You just kind of say 100 watts as an amp. I know that's not true, but just for round math, you could just say, oh, that's around 10 amps, and my electrical outlet can handle up to 12 safely because it's a 15 amp circuit. Then you'd be okay. But if you had 800 watts a heater and you had 4 lights that could run each 200 watts, now it's definitely a point where you're going to need 2 circuits. And you can actually ask the electrician, can you put in a second 20 amp circuit for me, please? And he would put in a special breaker that's 20 amps. He'd run a special wire made for 20 amps, and he'd put an outlet that can handle 20 amps. All that has to match. And then you can plug half your aquarium into that one, and the other half goes into the original 15 amp circuit. And so while they're not both 20s, but you can't just change the circuit breaker on the panel from a 15 to a 20 and say, now I have more power. Because the wire in the wall, if it's 14.2 gauge, is rated for 15 amps. You would need 12-2 or 12/2, which is for 20 amps. And we want to make sure that we are set correctly to avoid a house fire. So that's my answer to your question. And there's a lot more behind it, but that can help. I did a video about 1.5 years ago where I talked about the entire energy consumption I use for all my aquariums. And that was before the water box and before the 1 gallon tank. That 1 gallon's going to change everything. But no, it's just smarter if you can know what you're using and then decide what's best. I was talking to someone recently. He did a consultation, and he was talking to me about the pumps he had on his aquarium. And he was using some old pumps, the Supreme Mag pumps, and he had a 9.5 and he had an 18. The Mag 18 is a giant energy hog, and not only is it pulling a ton of power, it is AC driven, and it's really, that pump is a heater. It just heats the tank. So he has a chiller to cool the tank because of the heat coming off the pumps. So if you were thinking, oh, I'm really pulling a lot on my circuit, I feel like I don't have enough power for this area, maybe consider getting DC pumps that use way less power, because in those situations, using less power means the circuit will suffice. I hope that makes sense. But you need to know what everything's pulling, and the first thing is to just buy a kilowatt, which it's like $20-25. You can find it on Amazon, you can find it at Home Depot or Lowe's in the electrical section, and you can just come home and immediately start measuring stuff, and it's kind of fun. I remember one time I plugged in my huge TV that was hanging on the wall in the living room, and I did the math, and it was like, it's cost me 25 cents a day. I'm never turning this TV off again. That's it. I'm never turning it off. Triggerfish says, how is Markna 2.0 coming along? There's nothing to say yet. And yeah, Jason Langer, I was talking about you and your Reborn. I had the same Reborn in my Refugium. And of course I have it in my calcium reactor. And I was thinking for this little tank, I might take some of that Reborn out of the Refugium to kind of establish the bacteria in the 1 gallon tank. That was the idea. Grab some of this dry sand, which is just sand that came out of my aquarium. Just make sure there's nothing in it. This used to be in my mangrove vase, but I think this would be nice. And then I could take some of that rubble, and I can take that I really wish I'd stuck that barnacle in salt water a month ago. That would have been great, but it's super thin. I mean, it is truly a skeleton. And there's just nothing. There's no mass to it whatsoever. The thing is super lightweight. And it has, maybe 10 different hole sizes. So the blending can figure out which hole it likes best to call home. But it's not like adding live rock to my tank. But it's a decent size that it doesn't leave me a lot of room to add rock either. So maybe the rubble substrate might be my better choice for getting some beneficial bacteria in the tank. I kind of still want to put some kind of rock in there, but there's only so much space to play with. But yeah, so that's going to go in that little tank. Look, instant tank. It's on the sand. I'm not going to spill the sand all over my desk like I did the Bena pellets a year ago. That was so dumb. John, where do you live? He says, I have a 300-gallon reef and a 400-gallon outdoor saltwater pond and 2 quarantine tanks, and I think I've reached my limit. Oh, yeah. So I didn't even mention the frag tank, and I have an upcoming plan to have a quarantine tank, so there's 2 more for my collection. Thanks, Andrea, for sharing those links for Eileen's notepads and her other stuff. She makes all kinds of stickers and keychains and I think drinking glasses, coffee mugs, T-shirts, all kinds of stuff. And Andrea also shared the Coral Magazine link. That is a discount. If you aren't a subscriber to Coral and you want to be, you can get it for $37.05. It is the absolute least amount you can pay to get it. And listen, when you subscribe to the magazine, yes, you're going to get a print magazine. It's just going to show up in your mailbox. You're going to read it, you're going to love it, and you're going to stick it on the shelf, right? You're not going to throw it away. But then after that, you're going to have to wait 2 months for the next one. However, when you're subscribed to Coral, you also get the digital edition, which goes back to 2016? I think that's right. Maybe 2014. So you have like between 8 and 10 years of previous articles that you can look up through the portal. And you can just go into the search and say, I want to know about this fish, and find the species spotlight about that fish that we published 6 years ago and get that information. If you want to read up about breeding yellow tangs, you can take you to that magazine. If you want to learn about sexy shrimp, you can go to that magazine. There's just multiple publications. So you have like a whole library at your fingertips just by being a subscriber to Coral. So that right there is like bonus. It's like extra. If you subscribe to Time Magazine, you get Time Magazine. I don't think you get all the previous Time magazines. Watch someone prove me wrong. John says, have you seen the mimic cleaner wrasses being imported to the United States? They look like normal ones, but bite holes into your fish? Those sound terrible. No, I hadn't seen that. I do know there's always something new being bred, which is really exciting. And every time there's another breakthrough, I send it to Matt, because I hope Matt is keeping track of this list, because it's just nice to know all the captive bred fish that have been done thus far. And in the past, Coral Magazine has tracked it, and they make this giant list. And now the list is so long, it's easier to share the list online than it is to print it in the magazine, because it's just a list of names. But, you know, it's like over 300 species of fish. Maybe higher, maybe 360. It's a big number. It's crazy. Let's see. Yeah, Evan was pointing out here in the chat that there was a aquarium that I was told was brand new. It didn't look brand new to me, but they said it was a brand new tank. It was a 60-gallon, and the entire bottom just snapped. Just a huge double crack, and the entire tank drained, just flooded the showroom floor. There was a giant lake, and 60 gallons of water on concrete. It goes a long way. And first the guy came out there with a mop, and he started pushing the puddle around. But that is not how you clean floors. I mean, I used to do it for a living, and that is not how you do it. And then after a while, there was 5 guys that came out, and one guy was riding around on some kind of a vacuum Zamboni-looking thing, and he worked his way back and forth to dry the entire area. But as Evan said, it's lucky that this happened during the show, during the daytime, and not at 3 a.m. while we're all in our hotel room sleeping. Because all the livestock, all the torch corals and the other corals that were in that tank, they would have just been sitting in an empty tank. You know, all the water drained. I mean, the entire tank was drained. There was not one drop in the bottom because the entire bottom failed. And I'm really surprised that happened. And I'm even more surprised if it really was a brand new tank. That's a weird one. But because it looked like it was fully supported. You know, the stand was not something flimsy or cheap looking. It was a solid wooden stand. There was 3 tanks on 3 stands. They all looked equally supported. And yet, for some reason, this tank just let go. So it was a big mess, and we're all just staring because it's our worst nightmare. You never want a tank to fail you, ever, no matter where you are. John says I should come to England for the aquarium show in 3 weeks. Called Aqua H. Is that a silent H? Oh man, so I did this really stupid thing just before Reef Stock, and I did share it on Reef Builders, but they haven't shared it yet. So I guess I'll share it just because by now no one's listening to this show. Oh my god, I did the stupidest thing. I've never made this mistake in my life too. I've done some dumb mistakes when it comes to reef keeping, but this one here pretty much takes the cake right before a trade show. So number 1, there's a general rule. You never make any big changes on your tank before you leave town. And I usually don't. But in this case, my tank needed a big water change and had been waiting for a whole month. And it just happened to be that I was ready to do the water change the night before the trip. And so I mixed up, I had already mixed up all my salt water a month ago. But I just never corrected the alkalinity level to make it to where I could change the water. Because I'm very firm in the belief that when you're going to change water in your tank, the temperature, the salinity, and the alkalinity need to match. If you don't want to use alkalinity, the pH, okay? So temperature, salinity, and pH. As long as these 3 match, you can change as much water as you want, and the reef won't know. They just don't care. So my process has always been the same. When it comes to getting water out of the tank, I have a super long hose that's 44 feet long, and I just run a pump that pumps the water out of the sump, down the hallway, out the front door, down the driveway, and it just goes away. That is how I've always done my water changes. Well, when this was about to happen, we were still in our Texas heat wave. It was stupid hot outside. It was late at night, and everything was right. All the water was correct. I was ready for my water change. I'd done all my other things. I was like, let me just do this water change. And then, after that, I'll clean up. I'll do some other things. I'll pack my bags. I'll get some rest. And in the morning, I leave for Reef Stock. Well, I went and got the hose from the outside shed. I brought it inside. I flopped it down, on the floor in the foyer. And then I grabbed one end of it. I went into the fish room. I pushed it onto the pump. I put the pump in the sump. I plugged in the pump and started pumping water. And then, like 60 seconds later, I heard the distinct sound of a milk jug bouncing off the wall. And that is a sound you just know. I mean, a hollow milk jug has a bobbing sound to it. And I heard it bob against the wall. I think, that's weird. Why would I hear that? And I come out of the fish room and I look, and the water's this deep in the foyer because I pumped it straight there. I didn't put the other end of the hose down the driveway like I always do. Why didn't I do this? Because it was hot outside. Last thing I want to do was open the door and put it out there in the heat. So I threw the hose down in the hallway like I told you at the beginning of the story and didn't think twice about it. So I filled up my foyer with water. I'm like, you're an idiot. But it's happening. It's literally pumping water in as fast as the pump can move it. So instead of like running back into the fish room and unplug the pump and stop the flow, I thought just throw the door open and throw the hose outside and just stop adding more water to this area. Okay, did that, no problem. And I look at the water, I'm like, let me just get the shop vac. And I'm slurping it all up, and it's sucking it up, it's working, it's sucking up gallons of water. And then I eventually, I finished the water change. I got everything done. I filled the tank up. I got the real mop bucket out, mopped everything so it's nice and clean. And I'm thinking, okay, that was really dumb. I can't believe I did this. Knowing I'll never make that mistake again. Whenever you make a mistake, you learn from it, and you're like, never doing that twice. But then, it's like 2 a.m, and I walk into my bedroom, and I'm gonna throw my suitcase down, start throwing things in there I need, and figure out the things I need for my demonstration at the show. And when I got over near the closet, the carpet was damp. I thought, that's weird. And I reached down, and the dampness was everywhere. So all that water that went in the foyer that I thought I was vacuuming up, it was also going off the porcelain under the baseboard and into the bedroom that I've never flooded once in 25 years. I've never had any water in my bedroom at all. And that carpet was replaced a few years ago. And unfortunately, it went under the wall. I didn't think about this when I was cleaning up. I guess, hoped it was the water on the tile, which is fine. Water on tile, who cares? You can mop it up. But I did not think about it going under the wall. So I have a carpet extractor, and I've moved everything out of the closet for the full 12 feet, and moved all the shoes out of the way, everything out of the way, and just started extracting. And I spent like an hour and a half or 2 hours just working my way over this area over and over and over to get all the moisture out of the carpet. I mean, it wasn't wet like it was soaking wet, but it felt wet when you put your hand on it. So when I put the extractor on there, you could see the liquid coming up through the plastic. And so I just kept doing this until I couldn't see any liquid. And at that point, now it's later or earlier, depending on how you look at a clock. And I think I had to leave the house at like 5 or 6. So there's no point sleeping at this point. I've just spent a couple of hours really dealing with cleanup. And I left the ceiling fan on to, evaporate the last of the moisture that could be on there before my trip, and I went on the trip. And when I came back from the trip, I felt the carpet. It still felt a little damp. I'm like, really? Which, I mean, I know why. It's because the water got into the padding as well, which, invariably, normally when there's a big disaster, you peel up all the carpet, you cut out the padding, you throw it away. I didn't go to that extent. I don't think I need to. Because I did catch this pretty early on, but it really was dumb, and I'm probably gonna have to hire a company to just do carpet cleaning and just have them really work the closet really well. In the meantime, I'm probably gonna hit it again, this time with the regular carpet cleaning solution, and just work my way through the closet again and just give it a second shot so there's not salt in the carpet material itself. But it was so dumb, and just sharing it, just letting you know. Letting you know that I'm not perfect and I make dumb mistakes too. It was so ridiculous. Andrew says, bristleworms will eat each other to stay alive when there's not a lot for them to eat in the tank. What a nuisance. I trap them and I tweeze them, and I'm getting ready to use flatworm exit. Flatworm exit won't affect bristleworms that I'm aware of. But you definitely want to remove excessive bristleworms. You have too many, but usually they're really not a problem. They tend to just do what they're supposed to do. I mean, and they are basically controlled by their access to food. So the more food in the tank, the more abundant the food is, the more worms you're going to have. The less food, you'll have less. Now, having no food in the tank, yeah, I guess maybe what you're saying, they'll just eat each other alive. I've not observed that, but it's not crazy to think that couldn't be happening. Or it could be they're eating ones that are sort of alive, but sort of dying because they're starving to death. I don't know. But I definitely know that the abundance of food will, of course, make an abundance of bristleworms. But they're not evil. They're not terrible things. They just do what they do. They help clean up the tank. Panopolis says, have you ever used AcroPower? Is it possible to overdose it? It's just organics, right? Well, it's a bottle of amino acids as far as I know. And I have used it, but I never saw any uptick in my tank being better. It's one of those ones that when I asked Julian Sprung about it and said, so what's the deal? What is this stuff? He said 50% of people love it and swear by it, and 50% of people say they can't tell the difference. Well, Dwayne, my friend in Seattle, loves it and would not run a tank without it. I've used it on my reef, and I couldn't tell what it was doing. I just hooked up a jug and let it dose it daily, and, you just used it up. So I don't have an opinion on that. Now, is it possible to overdose it? I've never heard of anyone overdosing it. I mean, I'm sure it's possible, but I think, it's amino acids, so how much can you possibly put in there? Yeah, Rather Be Traveling says, go to Home Depot, get the floor. I actually own 2 of those floor drying fans. He says, pull up the carpet and, get it between the carpet and the mat. I don't know if I want to. It literally is the closet. It's not the bedroom. Dubai on Drone says, have you ever kept sea hares in your tank? No, I've never bought a sea hare. Not in all the years I've been in the hobby. I've never had a need for it. It's, usually when someone gets a sea hare, it's because they want to consume hair algae and they want, an animal to do it because they don't want to pluck it out. And you can do that, but you should definitely have the plans to return it as soon as you're running low on hair algae, because that's a beast. It mows it down, it works really fast, and then there's no food left and it starves to death. And we don't want that to happen. Our club used to have one. We shared it. His name was Rerun. That was a great name. And he just went from tank of hair algae to tank of hair algae to tank of hair algae. Panopolis says Jack wants out. She might have wanted to find out what's at the front door. Since she didn't keep going, maybe somebody just walked by. I'll take a look and see if there's anything. Nope. I think somebody just walked by. All right. Any other questions? Actually, since we're doing questions, I should be on this frame. The Fritz frame! So Fritz is a sponsor of this channel. If you didn't know that, I mentioned at the very beginning with my other microphone that some of you didn't like. And I use their salt, their glass cleaner, a few other things, their coral dip. And you know what? They've got a new food. Here, I'll show you guys. How can I do this? How can I do this easily? Let me see if I can plug in my phone and give you guys access to see it. We'll have to see if this works. So this one caught my eye, actually. Let me see how to get to this. Hang on 1 second here. Let's just grab this scene really quick. And then can we switch the camera? Okay. It's the camera. I didn't want the camera. Okay, that was wrong. Let me try that again. I wanted to put it up on... Oh, I got an idea. Sorry, it's been a while since I've added something like this. Here is a share screen. close this down. One second while I figure this out. I haven't done this in so long I forgot. Okay, share screen. I think that's the problem. It's trying to use the phone as a camera. I need to overlay something here. That's me. Okay, we're getting there. Close this one. Can we do this to something else? What does this do? There we go. All right, cool. So I'll stick this right here for you guys. So this is a suitcase of samples showing the different foods that they sell. Now, this is the Vitalis food from Fritz. And here's some of the ingredients. So there's mussel, shrimp, squid, fish meal, fish oil, vitamins, minerals. And then down lower, there's the different size pellets. And I don't know what that is, micronized. Spirulina powder, fine algae and algae. And then they got the different types of flake food and pellet food here. So I saw this. It's like anemone pellets. What is that? So I took a look. And it actually looks like a soft food. So it's a sinking pellet. And it's got a ton of ingredients in there. This was the marine pellets for feeding the fish. And this was the anemone pellets. I was like, man, those actually look kind of chewy. So I just wanted to show you guys that. All right. Come back to this. See if there's anything else on here I want to show you guys. What is this? That's nothing. Oh yeah, this was a funny one. Here, I'll show you guys this too. Let me jump. So this is a reactor from MRC. And I shared this on Instagram. I don't know if you guys saw it. But it was actually filled with shredded money. I'm just like, what? It's actually, why is there money in this reactor? So that was funny. Yeah. I want to show you guys that. And he said, well, it got you talking about it. And I was like, that's true. You suckered me in. You made me promote you. Is there anything else here? Not really. I didn't do much. I was working a booth. So I was doing the coral booth. And because of that, I didn't get to walk around much at all. Every time I was out and about, I would come back and there's people waiting at the booth. So I couldn't really abandon the booth. I was there talking about coral and also Amazonas, the freshwater publication, and I sold a few subscriptions over the weekend, which is always a good thing. And it was nice to see everyone. I really do enjoy these shows. I got to tell you, I just feel like I feel like you, my audience, need to be convinced to keep going to shows. And I know that it costs a lot of money, and I think that's the problem. I think that all of us are feeling the crunch, from the economy right now, and so anything surplus, a lot of us are not willing to do it. We don't want to spend the money to go on these trips, to stay at hotels, to pay for flights, to deal with the hassle of travel, to go to these shows, and that has been an ongoing feeling ever since COVID happened, where we learned you don't have to go places anymore, that you can do everything from home and you can do a Zoom call, with your doctor instead of seeing your doctor and stuff like that. And I think we're at the point now where we just don't want to go out very much. And that affects everything. It affects restaurants, it affects movie theaters, and it's affecting our trade shows. And so there's less and less shows. We lost Macna this year. And as these shows, and when people don't go to these different trade shows and the show goes away entirely, I mean, it can't recover from it. It can't just be they took a year off, because then the next year you've got people that are debating on both sides. As a vendor, do I want to go because I heard the turnout was bad? And the attendees say, do I want to go because it looks like they don't have very many vendors? It's just like this double-edged sword of negativity on both sides that are hurting the shows. And so if there is an event like Reefapalooza or Aquashella or whatever, Reef Stock, these are some of the shows that we can still go to. But if people stop going to these, they will go away as well. And you'll be stuck with just me on YouTube. I mean, it's the shame, because being with other people in public and shopping from tank to tank, looking for things you want to add to your tank, learning about products, learning about macroalgae was a big one this weekend. Tia Davis was there with a whole bunch of different types of macros. And that is also an upcoming magazine from Coral that's going to happen soon. And that one's going to be all about into macroalgae and running macroalgae planted tanks and stuff like that. Super exciting stuff. But you get the excitement from talking to people in person more than staying home watching on YouTube. So I'm just going to encourage you, whenever you can go to a show, you should go to a show. I've been to many, many shows over the last 20 years, and I really do enjoy seeing my friends and hanging out with them and going to dinner with them. And then, finally crashing in my room to get some sleep before I get up and hang out with them some more the next day. So I just encourage you guys, if you can go, you should go. Dubai on Drone says, have you tried Kalkwasser with Tropic Marin all for Reef combined? No? I don't even know if you can combine it. And I don't even do Kalkwasser, so that's half your answer right there. I do have some all for Reef. I haven't started using it yet. But I called Lou Eckes at Tropic Marin and said, hey, I've got this water box 20 gallon. It came with all for Reef. I'm planning to use it. And he just said, well, just so you know, and you probably know this, but I just want you to know it. And he said, you want to make sure all your parameters are correct when you use all for Reef. Don't use all for Reef to raise calcium or to raise alkalinity or to raise something. You're using it to maintain the correct numbers. So if your tank is deficit in something, if you're low on magnesium or if you're low on calcium, you got to buffer those up and make sure they're correct. And then when you use all for Reef on its regular daily basis, it'll help keep it right there as long as your bioload doesn't change rapidly. If you suddenly have a full-blown reef, maybe all for Reef won't be enough at that point. You'll still have to supplement other things to make up for what's lacking. It's just something to keep in mind. Yeah, salt is crazy expensive right now, and the reason salt is so expensive is because of shipping. It just costs a fortune to get it wherever it needs to go, and everyone's adding to the prices. They just are. I just did a quote to ship a small package to Canada, and in the past shipping was like $24 to $32, and it came back at $70 for the same package. And I was like, wow. So, when shipping's that high, it's going to ultimately affect the price of the product you're trying to get. There's money in all reactors, right? Well, technically, yes, but usually it doesn't look like money. Yeah, we've got I love that my electric bill is not terrible. I'm lucky about that. He says, I live in California and I envy your buying power over in Texas. Where I live, I got a really good deal on commercial electricity for my home, and I locked in a 5-year contract. So at some point, I think next year, I have to then start shopping around again for another, and I'll do it again. I'll get another 5-year contract to save money. Triggerfish says, maybe we should get aquascaping into the next Olympics. Be better than the breakdancing. There was an aquascaping contest at Reef Stock, and it was sponsored by Marco Rocks. So there was these 3 aquariums on 3 different tables, and then there was multiple boxes of rock for them to use, and there was 3 teams. And I tried to help one team cheat so that they could win, but they didn't win, which really surprised me because I was sure that my solution was going to help them win. So again, you got 3 aquariums, 3 teams, and a pile of rock. And you've just got to make a nice rockscape. So what I did was I came over to them and I whispered that right before they're done, they should add sand to their tank. Remember, we were just talking about this earlier, how much I love sand. And that way they would look better than the other 2 tanks. And they're like, we're going to do it. And they did. They snuck the sand in. There was no rule that said they couldn't, but there was also no bags of sand there for people to use. So me getting one, what do you call it, snuck over to them, when no one was looking, was already funny in itself. And then they poured it in, and the entire tank looked so much better. And I said, that tank in the middle, they're going to win because they have a secret ingredient. Like, well, what is it? I'm like, I can't tell you. Raj was the one that was hosting it. And he was like, huh, all right. And then they poured the sand. He goes, now I see what Mark was talking about. But then they didn't win, which is weird. This other tank won, and I was just like, no. And so, I told the winners, I said, look, you didn't win. Like, we won. I was like, no, you didn't win. I'm going to tell everyone the tank with the sand won because it was my idea. Andrea, what can I say? Some people don't know this stuff. They just think if I keep adding enough of this thing, it'll fix everything. Just like, I'm going to use Kalkwasser. It's just going to correct everything. Kalkwasser is another one of those maintainers. It's not one that buffers things up and increases the value of the number. It can help with your pH, but it's not going to suddenly increase your calcium level in the tank. It can't. It doesn't have enough calcium chloride in it. Thomas says, thank you for your help. With the rock I'm cleaning for my aunt for the new tank. It's starting to look brand new again. Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. John Wright says that Tropic Marin Pro salt costs about 90 pounds for 25 kilograms. 25 kilograms. That sounds like a lot. I'm over here, with multiple boxes of salt at a time. I'm mixing up 88 pounds of salt at a time, basically, when I make a batch of salt water, which is like a box and a half for me. Alrighty. Well, we've been talking for about an hour and a half. I think you should wrap it up. So I'm going to remind you guys that today is Water Test Saturday. Please do test your water parameters for everything. Test all of your tanks. Don't be lazy. You want to make sure that your alkalinity is good, your calcium, magnesium. You want to make sure that your pH is on track. You want to check nitrate and phosphate. And if those numbers are getting high, look at how you can bring them back down again. As you know, I use Phosphate RX to control my phosphate problems and giant water changes to control my nitrate problems. The alkalinity and calcium of my tank is added through a calcium reactor, and magnesium I dose with a dosing pump every single day until the jug is empty, and then I just refill the jug. I've been using something called Magnesium Pronto for years. This has been my go-to for probably the last 5 or 6 years. It's just so easy for me to mix up a batch and set it up to a dosing pump that puts in something like 80 milliliters a day while I'm asleep. Other than that, make sure your top-off containers are filled, make sure your dosing containers are filled, and that your dosing pumps are still putting in the amount you've programmed. And if you haven't calibrated yours in a while, it may be time to do it this weekend. So just kind of stay on top of things, because if you do everything right, your livestock will be healthy and happy. And if you neglect things and you blow it off, then you're going to lose stuff, and you're going to lose money, and you're going to lose time. And that's, ultimately, when something goes wrong in your tank, it usually takes about 12 weeks to recover. That's a long wait. And I've seen this time and time again. When something went awry in my tank, 3 months later, it finally looked good again. But there was that period that was really frustrating and depressing, because it's just lost time. You spent years growing it. It's gone. You fixed whatever was wrong because you didn't catch it soon enough. And now you got to wait 12 weeks for it to get back on track. And then suddenly things get going. My 400 gallons looking really good. I'm very happy with it these days. I need to do some more filming of it and show you guys. There's some really pretty corals. I shared a few pictures here. I'll throw a couple on here if I can find them right quick. Let's see. Why is it doing that? Well, let's do this. Oh, how weird is that? So, let's try a new Finder window. Maybe that'll work. I don't even know where it is. It's right in front of me. So here are a couple of pictures I took this week. I know I'm interrupting our nice ending here, but I figured, why not? I didn't show it to you guys on YouTube. So we'll go to this one here. And there's my barnacle blenny. And this is my red dragon. And this is I think it's called a Paletta yellow tip. It's not very yellow. I mean, the tips aren't yellow, but the core of it kind of has a yellow look to it. Here's some bird's nest. And this is a stick of digitata or forest fire digi that the bird's nest has not smothered all by itself. So I just wanted to show you guys that. That was taken with a Nikon this week with a macro lens. But I need to get some new pictures of the tank. I haven't done it in a while. It's kind of funny. I go through these phases where I don't like my tank and I don't share anything. And I'm just looking at them like, whatever. But in this case here, these corals are pretty. It's just the tank's too full. I can't see everything. And so I've been kind of neglecting it a little bit, the photography part of it. But now I'm trying to, be a little bit better. I really wish I could just take my entire reef and lower it 1 foot so I could appreciate what's going on, because it's all up near the surface again. Because that's what happens with my tank. Every couple of years it does that. And as I said, I think I mentioned earlier, my tank is turning 11 years old this November. So that's a long time with this reef. And it's time for another big reset. And I don't know if anyone needs like 2 square feet of bird's nest, but I have a whole bunch. So let me know. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Finally, last thing I should say as I'm ending the show, if you aren't buying things from Mila's Reef, please do. It helps keep me in business and allows me to keep doing my YouTube videos as well. But that way I don't have to start flipping burgers or something. This is my job. So if you can buy things at shop.milasreef.com, I always appreciate that. And I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you again next weekend. Bye.